Hey guys, before I get started on this episode, the Golden State with Mates Patreon has a new lower price, $2.99 and $4.99 per month memberships where you can access up to 5 bonus podcast episodes every week, a daily Warriors newsletter, and get yourself in the draw to win monthly giveaways. I'll leave a link in the description. It would be great if you could go and check it out. Coming up on this episode, the positives and negatives from Kristaps Porzingis' debut with the Golden State Warriors and what resulted as a 121-110 loss to the Boston Celtics at Chase Center on Thursday night. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Hope you've all had a good week so far. We finally got to see Kristaps Porzingis in action for the Warriors on Thursday night against his former team in the Boston Celtics. And fair to say things didn't go overly well for Golden State, at least through the first three quarters. A barrage of threes in the first half had the Celtics up 74-51 at halftime. They extended that to as many as 34 in the third quarter. But the Warriors finally sparked to life, finally found some energy early in the fourth, went on a 15-0 run too. I don't think anyone thought that they were ever going to pull off what would have been the most remarkable comeback ever. But they made the game interesting, let's say. I mean, the final margin was only 11 at the end of the day. They got back. They got back to like 14, 15. After that 15-0 run, it was like, a 14, 15-point game with still like 8, 9 minutes left. So I suppose technically they were back in the game. But I don't know. I think I look back at it and I'm frustrated and disappointed that I understand you can't play with that level of defensive intensity necessarily. You can't like be picking up full court pressure and stuff like that all game. But why do you have to wait till the fourth quarter? Why do you have to wait till you're down 30 to do that? Why can't that happen? Like, oh, we're struggling second quarter, down 15. We've got to really make sure the game doesn't get away from us. Let's apply some full court pressure. Let's try and force some turnovers. Why can't you do it then? Why do you have to wait until the game's over? Until it's way too late? And again, a fake comeback of sorts. Now, were there some positives from it? Absolutely, no doubt. And at least it's something for the Warriors to take forward. At least there's some momentum, hopefully, to take into Sunday's game against the Denver Nuggets, which is going to be another really big challenge without Steph Curry, who was announced yesterday will be reevaluated in 10 days. That means he's going to miss a further 4 games after already missing 6 with this current runner's knee issue. So that means the Warriors are going to struggle. The Warriors are really going to struggle, and they seem locked into the play-in right now. It seems very difficult. To envisage them moving up into the top 6. Portland and the Clippers are behind them and could be dangerous. The Warriors could fall all the way to 10, I suppose. They're not going to fall out of the play-in because, let's be honest, the teams below them aside from Portland and the Clippers are still reasonable, but obviously with their moves for James Harden and Ivica Zubac moving them out, tends to suggest that they're not overly keen on winning this season. While they've got Kawhi Leonard, they can still be dangerous. How long they've got Kawhi Leonard for, I don't know. Maybe we'll wait and see if there's any kind of penalty or ban coming down for him with the whole aspiration deal and whatever else. But the Warriors aren't going to fall out of the play-in. And they can't really tank. They're just a bad team, obviously, without Steph and Jimmy, and that's understandable. When you're missing your 2 best players, you are going to struggle. My thing is, and I've always said, you can lack offensive talent. You can lack talent on the floor without your 2 best players. That's fine. What I can't have is a pretty inexcusable effort that we saw in the first 3 quarters. I can't have that. That was a shocking effort, right? To go on with the fact that, hey, this is a tough watch to see this offense, struggling as much as it did. And then again, more so defensively, just the lack of attention and effort I thought was pretty disgusting. And again, they brought it back in the fourth quarter, but why did it have to take until that point? Obviously, Porzingis was the big watch for this game. He played 17 minutes, and you know what? I thought it went about as we'd expect. I thought it was reasonable. He didn't blow anything out of the water or anything like that. But I thought he was about as good as we could have imagined. The first stint, obviously, starting the second quarter wasn't great. He played alongside Draymond Green. The Warriors got outscored 17-2, and that was probably the difference in the game, that period there where the Warriors, I think Will Richard hit that buzzer beater at the end of the first, and were down 4, I think, at the end of the first quarter. And then that 17-2 run kind of blew the game open. The Warriors never really recovered from that position. So the first stint was pretty rough. Came back in late first half, had the dunk where Al Horford found him down low, kind of fumbled the ball, got it back, went up with it and dunked it. Then had that end of shot clock wing 3, which was nice. But again, the Warriors just gave up so many threes in the first half, so many wide open looks. I'll get into that in a second. And trailed by 23. And then the second half, again, was, Porzingis was part of the 15-0 run at the start of the fourth quarter and was a big part of that, getting some buckets. So, again, I thought a pretty solid game from him. What I would say is, like, this dude's been in the league for a decade now. At 30 years old, we kind of know we know who he is at this point. Even with, like, the injury and the health concerns over the past couple of seasons, like, when he's on the floor, the numbers have kind of just been the same. Like, he's actually a very consistent player, I would say. Now, he doesn't consistently get on the floor. That's the big issue. But when he's on the floor, you know who he is. And again, I just thought we saw that yesterday. We saw a guy who is a pretty good NBA player, like to a very good NBA player again when he's on the floor. So the positives for me, the offense came as advertised. Again, this is like a 20-point per game scorer for his career, and the numbers have always been. In fact, if you look at like the per 36 numbers this season, they're actually a little bit better than his career. So I don't think he hasn't fallen off offensively, particularly in any way, shape, or form. We saw the kind of 3-level scoring that he'll be able to provide the Warriors, and why he will very quickly become like the second offensive option for them. The ability to post up on mismatches, take advantage, obviously, the 7'2", 7'3" height there. Either easily shoot over, like he had a couple of mid-range jumpers where it's like the defender can't do anything. He's just that tall, and pure jumper. Like, he doesn't see the defender whatsoever. Just shoots over the top rather easily. Looks pretty effortless, it must be said. I like the fact as well, like from early in the game, like the Celtics are kind of double teaming him in post up, which is going to be fantastic when the Warriors actually have more offensive talent around him. That's the problem, is like he was double teamed on a couple of occasions in the first half yesterday, and he kicked it out of those double teams. And it's like, well, okay, if it's a Draymond Green open 3, like that's exactly that. That's why the defense is doubling KP, because like they have no issues with letting Draymond fire away from 3. And there's just not enough offensive talent around him at the moment to necessarily utilize that, or for that to be as effective as you want. And it'll be interesting to see, like, when Steph's out on the floor, or like maybe next season if KP's still around and Jimmy comes back, it's like, opposing defense is actually going to double team him in those scenarios, or are they going to be like, well, hang on, there's more offensive talent around him now, so we don't want to do that, and then he's going to be able to have the ability to obviously capitalize from a scoring standpoint, easily shoot over guys and whatnot. So he's obviously got that height, he's got that skill set where just putting him in post-up situations. He's also like, I saw some nice passing ability. Like, again, his assist numbers per 36 this season are way up. Like, he's a career 2.2 assists per game, but I think per 36, he's 2.2 assists per 36. And he's like 4 this season in his 17 games with the Hawks. Not only from like post-up situations, but also like top of the arc. There's a couple of times where he like found cutters, didn't necessarily lead to buckets at all, but like found guys cutting to the rim and stuff like that. So Steve spoke about beforehand, like being able to utilize him in so many different ways, whether, again, it's from the top of the arc, whether it's from post-up situations where he's the guy in with the ball in his hands, either, utilizing him as a scorer or a passer, or he can like be the cutter in split cut actions, or he can actually come off and be the shooter in split cut actions. Like, he's an incredibly versatile offensive player. We saw the couple of threes that he bombed from not just 3-point range, but like deep. That one early fourth quarter as part of that 15, like that was well beyond the 3-point line, and just lasered it in. So again, the offensive versatility is going to be a real weapon if he can stay on the floor and play 20 to 25 minutes a game. I think we saw that straight away. And I thought that was, 12 points in 17 minutes, 5 of 9 shooting. It's exactly what we wanted to see offensively. So I thought that was great. In terms of the rim protection on the defensive end, again, the first half was rough. The second half, you could kind of see how kind of thrilling it's going to be to have like a 7'2", 7'3" guy who can just be there to not just necessarily block shots. Like he had the one on Vucevic where Vucevic drove and it kind of almost looked like the easiest block ever for KP. Like he almost double blocked it with both arms. But just having a guy at that size who can deter shots at the rim, I think is going to be huge. Now, this first matchup against the Celtics was probably the least ideal matchup you could possibly have in your debut game, especially after only playing 17 games this season, having not played since January 7. The Celtics' ability to space the floor and shoot it from all 5 positions really, really hampered his effectiveness on defense to the point where you would say the Celtics scored 32 points in 7.5 first half minutes with Kristaps Porzingis on the floor. Like that's a rate of over 50 points in a quarter. You would have to say like KP was a defensive liability in the first half. And again, in the second half, showed some of those flashes of rim protection and how against more traditional bigs, he's going to be really, really effective where he can just roam around the rim. Again, the negatives, to delve into that for a second, the negatives in the first half, he looked slow, like really, really slow, like not getting out of a jog, essentially, it didn't feel like. And maybe that's just who he is at this point. Again, all the physical ailments and injury issues that he's had and stuff like that, along with the health concerns and whatever else. But I was kind of shocked by how slow he looked. And maybe that's on me. Maybe I should just be like, hang on, he's coming back from injury. And he's gonna get obviously better up to speed physically. Okay, so that should only improve, right? But he gave up like a bunch of threes, like late closing out to shooters, like the one with there was a corner three from Vucevic early second quarter where KP again was just like trying to sag off, hang around the paint, and Vucevic made him pay for a pretty easy corner three there. So his slow-footed nature, I think, when asked to guard beyond the paint and again close out to shooters and stuff like that, that's going to be a bit of a problem moving forward. Like he was so slow guarding in space, again, couldn't close out to shooters and stuff like that. The other thing to me, and again, maybe it's just on me, maybe that's just the trade-off of having a 7'3" guy who's like 30 years old and dealt with a lot of physical injury issues. Like he's not Wemby. Like Wemby can actually go and close and guard on the perimeter a little bit and stuff like that. Expecting that out of KP is probably unfair. And I think you've just got to understand that, hey, if you're going to have this 7'3" guy who can, be a rim protector and deter shots at the rim, like sometimes he's going to get abused out on the perimeter. And that's kind of just the trade-off you got to make. It's why like Quentin Post is out of the rotation now, why his minutes kind of sunk. Not only because like the 3-point shooting hasn't been great this season, but as much as we've really raved about his defensive improvements as like a rim protector and just being far sturdier on the inside, I think that's been a great leap as part of QP's game this season. But he still struggles like closing out to guys and, having to guard in space and stuff like that. So again, it's just a trade-off. You got to make having a 7'3" guy on the floor. That's just who he is. And there's going to be concerns in different matchups. But to me, it's like, okay, you got to try and play him as much as you can with like more traditional bigs. Like, I don't know how much like Neemias Queta was on the floor when KP was on the floor. It felt like that didn't happen. But like looking back at it, that's kind of, you would like to match Porzingis' minutes up with Queta because Queta's not going to stretch the floor from three. Now, there's going to be times where obviously in pick and roll situations where KP is going to have to come up to the level of the screen depending on the ball handler and how much of a threat he is from beyond the arc and as just a jump shooter in general. But generally, if you can play him against traditional bigs who don't stretch the floor, who don't have a jump shot, then that's going to allow him to sag off a little bit more, to not necessarily have to close out as much, to be able to just roam around the paint and be so much more effective doing that, obviously, because he's going to be able to deter shots at the rim and block shots, again, which he flashed a little bit in the second half. So, again, not an ideal matchup. And moving forward, I think Steve's got to do a really good job of being like, all right, obviously, he's going to come into the starting lineup. So, at some point. So, it really, like, he'll just be a starter regardless of what the matchup is, obviously. But even like if he's part of like second unit minutes and stuff like that, I think it's just important to have him in the most beneficial situations too, because he can be like, it's a big difference. It's a stark contrast, I think, between him defensively when there's going to be a traditional big out there, and then like where there's 5 out and he's asked to go and close out on shooters. Like, he will be either a real defensive liability, or he'll actually be a real positive defensive presence. Like, it's going to be a stark contrast. So I think the Warriors just have to do a good job with matching up his minutes against traditional bigs moving forward. And again, facing Boston, like, it's incredible to me. They've got the second best offensive rating in the league, or at least they did going into yesterday's game. They might have overtaken Denver now. Top 2 offensive rating in the league, and they've done that without Jason Tatum, which is just quite astonishing. And I mean, you could see yesterday like why that's the case. Even missing their best player, why, like, they've got Jaylen Brown, who's obviously a superstar at this point, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and then they just like surround them with shooters. Vucevic has come in, Sandhauser, all these different guys. Even there's some of their young guys like Shyman and Gonzalez and guys like that. They all shoot it. So they just spread you out and make things really, really difficult, particularly if you've got slow-footed guys like KP. And again, that's just the trade-off of having a 7-3 guy, which is going to, like, at times yesterday was like frustrating to watch. It's like, KP, like, can you be a bit quicker closing that to that guy, please? Can you be a little bit more effective guarding, like, out in space? Yes, that was frustrating, but there's also going to be times, we saw it in the second half, there's going to be a lot of times moving forward where it's like, oh, this guy's actually fantastic to have defensively because he's actually offering the rim protection the Warriors really just haven't had over the past few years. So again, looking at, like, he had 1 rebound in 17 minutes. That's not good. But again, that's going to come down to if he plays against traditional centers and can just roam around the paint. Well, that's just going to lend itself to getting more rebounds moving forward as well. So, look, a little bit of a negative in terms of the defensive end, but I just think there's going to be a stark contrast between him and his defensive impact depending on what the matchup is, essentially. And I think Steve's going to have to try and do a pretty good job, not only with like the own rotations and who KP plays alongside, but also who he plays against in certain matchups and stuff like that. Moving on from KP, who again, I thought it was solid. If I was grading it like a B, like, it wasn't an A+ game necessarily by any means. The Warriors got blown out in the first 3 quarters, but it was solid. It was solid. And, for first and foremost, he got through the game, right? And said afterwards that he felt good, that he would have liked to play more, that he wants to play an extra few minutes on Sunday against Denver. So, again, first and foremost, he got through the game fine and will only get better physically, which should help him particularly on the defensive end moving forward. We obviously spoke about KP there and playing alongside Draymond at the start of the second quarter. Draymond's game was, I would have liked to hear his interview. I would have liked for him to be put up in the press, and that was never going to happen. But sometimes individual performances are so bad they require an explanation, and that's how I would categorize Draymond's game yesterday. That was so terrible that I need some answer from him as to why it was so terrible. Like, is this just who he is? Maybe, yes. But like we also saw before the All-Star break, that game against Wemby was fantastic, right? And Steve's coming out today and said, oh, well, like, Steph being out hurts Draymond more than anyone. This is the direct quote from Steve Kerr in the past 2 hours. When Steph goes out, it really changes everything in terms of how defenses guard us, and it impacts Draymond probably more than anybody. So that's a fantastic quote for any like Draymond haters who think he's just like ridden on the back of Steph for the last dozen years. You can use that quote for the rest of eternity now. But Steph was out in that game against the Spurs before the All-Star break, and Draymond played arguably his best game of the season, one of his best games of the season. And so the difference between his best in that kind of game and yesterday is like ridiculous. Like, it is so big. And this is the problem is, like, guys get to this age, 35, 36, and some of the superstar players are still be superstars. Like, Steph is still obviously great. Jimmy's still great. But often with veteran guys, this is kind of what happens through a long 82-game season is you don't get that same level of consistency. It's just up and down. And as much as it's like disappointing, what I would say is there's actually kind of some potentially like some good things going on here when Draymond plays badly. First of all, he just doesn't play as much. And I think all Warrior fans would actually, like, he played 18 minutes yesterday. It was a minus 28 in 18 minutes. He had like 3 rebounds, 2 assists, went 0 of 7 from the floor, missed all his threes. And what I would say, didn't just miss all his threes, none of them looked like going in. They were all way off. I think after he missed 3 in the first quarter, I was like, Draymond, put it away, buddy. That's enough from you. Put that 3 ball away. We don't need to see it again. It's hurting my eyes. We won't see him play as much, which I think is good. You look at Quinn Post was a DNP yesterday, which I don't particularly like. If Draymond's going to play like he did yesterday and open as the small ball 5, like, I just wouldn't play Draymond at all. I would be like, if he's going to be that much of a negative and you think he's that reliant on Steph, can we reevaluate Draymond in 10 days? Can we just say to Draymond, just go chill out, brother. Just go have another week off. You just had the All-Star break. Go and chill out some more. Let's have, I don't know, KP start or QP start, one of the two. Let's just give Quentin Post those Draymond minutes, essentially, and have Horford, KP, and Al Horford, play those. Because, like, Draymond's is, like, such a negative when he's playing a game like, again, the numbers say he was a minus 28 in 18 minutes, which is pretty hard to do, it must be said. So he's not going to play as much, which is good. It also makes, like, they're going to have kind of a complicated decision with Draymond in the offseason. But if Draymond keeps playing this badly, it's not really a complicated decision. You'd be going to Draymond and saying, look, you've got this $27.7 million player option. It's rather simple. If you pick it up, well, we're going to probably attach first round picks to you, and we're gonna move you. Like, and you're gonna, be off the Warriors. And I'm sure you want to, finish your career as a member of the Golden State Warriors and be a one-team player. Well, if you pick up that option, you're not going to be that. It's pretty simple. We were pretty close to. I know the Warriors are trying. Mike Dunleavy Jr. and even Joe Lake today is kind of pushed back, obviously, on the idea of trading Draymond before the deadline. We all know he was going to be included in the Giannis trade if that was going to take place. So I'm going to Draymond if I'm Mike or Joe or whatever in the offseason. So you pick up that player option, fine, good on you. You've been fantastic for this franchise. You probably deserve that money. But guess what? We're going to move you. Okay, we're going to attach the picks, whatever, might attach pods, whatever else, and we're going to move on from you, and you're going to have no choice in your next destination. Alternatively, you can opt out and you can take a far, far lesser deal at 12 to 15 million a season or something like that. That's going to help us bring back Kristaps. That's going to help us potentially bring back D'Anthony Melton. Obviously try and bring back Guy Santos as a restricted free agent. And tell Draymond, like, you're going to be like, you're an 18 to 20 minute per game player now. Now, sometimes, big matchups, you get up for them, big playoff moments. Okay, you might play 25 to 28 minutes, right? But generally, like, we're just going to manage you through the regular season. You are no longer necessarily like the third best guy on the team behind Steph and Jimmy. Like, if we bring Porzingis back, he's probably like the third guy. And the Warriors are just going to have a team where it's like a bunch of old guys. Al Horford might be back as well as a 40-year-old in year 20. And they're all going to play like 18 to 28 minutes a game. And no one's necessarily going to get to 30. And you're going to have, and this is why it's disappointing. Like, this is why if Draymond does opt into that, well, you kind of got to move, I'd be giving up the picks with Draymond for like Trey Murphy and trying to get a young guy in there who can eat a lot of. This is why the Warriors wanted to bring back Kuminga as a restricted free agent last offseason, because they kind of saw how veteran and aging their roster was and thought, we just need guys who can score the ball, who can eat up minutes and give us a chance in the games where Steph's resting or he's out with a minor injury like he is now, or Jimmy's out resting. And obviously Jimmy's unfortunately out for the year now, or like Draymond's needs to be managed, and Al Horford needs to be managed, and now Porzingis needs to be managed. So they just need another guy who can productively play big minutes, essentially, because right now they've got an aging roster where it's like, you don't want to play any of these guys more than like 28 minutes. And in the case of Draymond, he's just simply not good enough to play that many minutes. Like, he's just another guy on the team right now. He's very up and down. And that's kind of just who he is. Like, he can still very rarely bring out great performances like we saw against Wemby and the Spurs for the All-Star break. But he can also have the downside of him, which was yesterday's game, downright awful. One of the worst games you'll see from an NBA player, period, right? Who, is a genuine starter for this team. And the fact, like, continuing with him as a small ball five, I just think is, why? Why are we doing it? Like, it puts extra burden on him. I don't think it doesn't particularly work, especially when he's not, engaged and playing with energy like we saw last night. So it is what it is. I think as much as we're disappointed and frustrated with his performances right now, like, there actually is a positive to it. He's going to play less, and it's going to make for a very simple decision in the offseason. You pick up the option and we'll trade you, or you opt out and, we bring you back at a number that is far more reflective of a player at this point of your career, because you can't pay if you're paying $27 million to a guy, like, you expect some level of consistency. You expect to go into every game kind of knowing what you're going to get from that $27 million player. You go into every game and you don't know what you're going to get from Draymond. That's the problem. Now, that's okay if he's like on $10 to $12 million a year, and therefore he can only, if you want to keep him to 16, 18 minutes and he's on 10 to 12 million, it's like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. But like on $27 million, it's like, no, like, that dude should be a consistent player who you know what you're going to get from him, and he's going to play 28 to 30 minutes a game. Draymond isn't that, unfortunately, at this point. So we'll wait and see what happens in the offseason. In terms of other things from this game, not too much else. Again, the first three quarters were horrible. The one positive, I suppose, early in the game was Will Richard had 15 points in the first half, 11 in the first quarter, hit 3 threes. That was a really exciting sign, I think, because he kind of hit the rookie wall. He spoke about that after the game, had plateaued over the previous month, was probably close to losing his spot in the rotation, if not for the Steph injury right now, obviously the Jimmy injury as well, and the Seth Curry injury as well, which continues to be a bizarre one. He's going to be reevaluated in another 2 weeks. I don't know if Seth Curry's ever going to play again at this point, but Will Richard, I thought, was a big positive from yesterday's game. Melton did his thing with a team high 18 points. I thought he was fine. Didn't think it was necessarily a great game from him necessarily. Moody was disappointing. Yeah, there's not too much. Obviously Porzingis was the big watch, and I think we all saw what we wanted to see, as much as the result of the game was obviously disappointing. Going to finish it up there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at Pop252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. Golden State with Mates on the Patreon, TikTok, and Instagram as well. I'll be back after Sunday's matchup against the Denver Nuggets. Hopefully a better result for the Warriors, but I'm not too optimistic, given obviously Steph remains out and Denver, one of the best teams in the league, even though they lost to the Clippers yesterday, they are going to be a formidable opponent for the Warriors to try and beat. Thanks again, guys.